Hello YouTube. Alright, here we have my Super Nintendo. Now, I've been unable to play this for a couple years because I didn't have controllers. And I bought controllers recently and got burned on both of them. There's one over there amongst that stuff, and there's one here. This is the better looking one of the two. This is completely immaculate if you look at it. It looks like it was just cleaned like an hour ago. It's beautiful. That warranty thing is gone because I went in there to see what was wrong with the controller. The controller doesn't work though. Start and select don't work, and the D-pad doesn't work at all. From what I'm told, it's because of bad solder joints. So I'll probably be able to fix this. But I don't have a tool. I don't have a soldering iron that's small enough for the job that I need. So I'm going to have to buy equipment to fix it. The face buttons do work though. But D-pad, start and select don't. Okay, so those controllers were a rip-roaring failure. And I paid good money for these too, at least for this one. Thing is, I didn't test it until like a month after I bought them because this thing just looks so perfect that I didn't think anything would be wrong with it. But lo and behold, the one that looks worse actually has a working D-pad. So clearly these need some repair. I might make some videos on how to fix this at some point. But right now, I don't want to repair a thing, and I want to play my damn games. So what I did to remedy this situation, until I can get the proper equipment to repair the controller, is I bought two of these Retrobit wired Super Retro Controller Solos. I've heard good things about these, and so I decided to give it a try. I wanted something new instead of something used, so I didn't get burned on controllers again. So, gonna try this thing out. It even has the proper Famicom colors on the face buttons, which is kind of nice. So, these are nice from what I hear. What I've heard is that the D-pads are good on these, unlike a lot of the third-party controllers. So definitely good to have. Claims to have a 6-foot cable, and it claims to be heavy duty. There you go. It's for the Super Nintendo and the Retro Duo. Retrobit also makes a Famiclone called the Retro Duo. It can play NES games and Super Nintendo games. Compatible with the official SNES, Retro Duo Portable, and Super Retro Trio, and other third-party 16-bit consoles. The cable length is 6 feet. It has an ergonomic and simple design. Original controller color scheme, as in the Famicom one, and 8 function buttons plus D-pad. There you have it. This controller just looks very comfortable, so I cannot wait to give this a try. So let's open the box and check it out. And this is what you get in the box. It comes wrapped in plastic. And of course it has the Super Nintendo connector on the end. The wire feels pretty good. Let's take it out of the bag and take a look at the controller. Here is the controller itself. As you can see, the molding in the plastic it's okay. I mean, you can see like lines and things here, but for the most part, it looks great. Now, I wanted this controller not only because I've heard the D-pad was really good, but the design of it just looks very ergonomic and comfortable. As you can see, it has these little things, these little contours that sort of fit to your fingers. It's made in China, of course. It was made in 2013. Looks like it was made in August of 2013, based on that sticker there. Has everything you'd expect on a Super Nintendo controller. It has a D-pad that feels really nice, actually. Yeah, D-pad on these is nice. Start and select buttons, which are those sort of rubbery type. Face buttons, which mimic the Famicom's buttons pretty well. Concave buttons as well as convex buttons. Buttons feel pretty good. A little bit more tactile than the Super Nintendo ones. The Super Nintendo ones have very light touch and not much tactility. whereas the buttons on here are very tactile, have a little bit more travel. So it's actually, to me, that's a little bit more satisfying to press a button like that. Yeah, this controller feels really nice. The shoulder buttons feel a lot more tactile as well. All the buttons just feel a lot more tactile on this than they do on the old one. Let's see if the connector was molded properly. Yeah, it fits in there just fine. You can play your games. Yeah, that D-pad actually feels really nice. So these controllers are pretty high quality. They feel pretty good to me so far. The buttons just feel so much better. This feels like it has been either worn or, I don't know. There's something a little bit more satisfying about these buttons than on the original, which is hard to believe because I've always gotten original controllers for systems, but yeah, this controller will be absolutely fine with this system. The one big difference though is that this controller has a little bit of weight to it, not much, but a little bit. This one is virtually weightless, but it doesn't feel like a cheap piece of junk. It actually feels like it'll stay together. Yeah, this controller feels pretty nice. I think I should plug this thing in and play a game with it and then let you guys know what I think. Alright folks, I'm in front of the TV. Got Super Mario All-Stars up on the Super Nintendo. Typical Mario game, something that a lot of people would play on their Super Nintendos. So that's what we're going to test. Here I have the Retrobit controller here. What was this controller called? The wired Super Retro Controller Solo. One of these guys. And so far, my first impressions are that the contours on the back feel really nice to grip in your hand. My fingers are long though, so generally controllers from the NES and Super Nintendo tend to feel a bit cramped to me. The controllers that feel the best to me are the bulkier ones, like the 3-button Sega Genesis controller and the original Xbox controller, the really big one. That one felt great to me. So a controller like this for people with long fingers is going to be cramped, whether it's third party or not, just because of the way it is. But even with my long fingers, it still feels pretty nice. So I'm going to play Super Mario All-Stars version of the original Mario Brothers. Playing a typical Mario game that a lot of people would on their Super Nintendo. So let's give this a try. One thing I will say is I agree with a lot of the reviews I saw online. The D-pad feels very nice. On a lot of third-party controllers like this, the D-pad is pretty awful. Like you can press the entire thing in the middle, whereas on this one, it very much emulates the original one. In fact, it's actually every button on this controller, the face buttons and the D-pad, are a lot more tactile than on the original controller, which I was surprised by. Yeah, it feels very tactile and very the buttons feel satisfying to push. Yeah, this controller is excellent so far. I've had no trouble with it at all. I can't speak for finger fatigue, but because my fingers are long, and on any controller where I have to scrunch my hands up, it's going to give me fatigue no matter what, so I'm kind of a bad person to ask about that. But the controller feels excellent. I absolutely love it. Just got through the first level of Mario here. No fireworks. I'm disappointed. Yeah, the controller feels excellent to me. I don't really have many qualms with it. I actually like it a little bit better than my regular Super Nintendo controllers because the buttons are more tactile. The controller sure looks a lot different and gives the impression that it could be cheaper by the way it looks, but this controller is actually very high quality, at least out of the box so far. Very, very positive experience. Yeah, even mashing buttons. The only thing is, yeah, mashing buttons, I've noticed, like I'm doing, not crap, I died, but mashing buttons I've noticed will probably fatigue your thumb a little bit more on this controller because the buttons are more tactile, whereas the buttons did not take as much travel to push on the original controller. So it could fatigue your fingers a little bit more, or at least your thumb, based on that fact. But for just regular gameplay, it seems fine. But if you're going to play a button masher, it might fatigue your fingers a little bit. But so far, I like the feel of this better than the original, which is, like, blasphemy, I know, but it feels great. I only wish that that both the original controller and this controller were a little bit bigger for people like me with longer fingers. Yeah, my impressions are that this is an excellent controller. If you've been burned like I have on the original Super Nintendo controllers being bad due to age or misuse or what have you, these are definitely a great replacement. The Retrobit has definitely made an excellent controller here. It feels great to play games with. It doesn't feel cheap. It's light. It's lightweight, but it does not feel cheap. Works just fine in my Super Nintendo. Yeah. Very tactile buttons, too. So if you like tactility, this is definitely a controller to get. It feels excellent. The buttons feel fantastic on this thing. Even the shoulder buttons are pretty tactile. They take a little bit more force to push down than on the original. So if you push buttons lightly, it takes some getting used to. But it's an excellent controller. I like it. So, what is my overall impression of this Retrobit controller? The wired Super Retro controller, Solo. I give this a 10 out of 10. It is a fantastic alternative to the original Super Nintendo controller. It doesn't have the problems that so many third-party controllers do with horrible D-pads. This D-pad feels very much like the original, other than the fact that the buttons are more tactile and there's more travel when you push one down. So you have to push it down a little bit farther for it to register. But the feel is still excellent. It's very satisfying when you push any of the buttons on this controller because all of them are tactile, very tactile. Even the start and select buttons are tactile, which is crazy. On the original Super Nintendo, they're a little bit mushy. The buttons in general on the original Super Nintendo controller are a bit mushy, but not mushy enough to feel horrible. These, on the other hand, these buttons feel very tactile and very satisfying and very high quality in my opinion. So, definitely an excellent impression. The only issue I could see with this controller is with button mashers, because the buttons are so tactile and they're not as much of a light touch as on the original Super Nintendo controllers. Button mashing might fatigue your thumb a little bit more just because of how much travel the buttons have and how tactile it is. So it really depends on who you are and what you like, but that's the only issue I could see coming out of using one of these. But theoretically, the grip should take care of that, because the grip is far superior to the original Super Nintendo controller. I love the design of this controller. It feels excellent in my hand, even with my big fingers being too long to use this controller, or any Super Nintendo controller for that matter. It still feels really good in the hand and really good to use. So I give this a 10 out of 10 because it's the best alternative to a Super Nintendo controller you'll probably be able to find anywhere. It's a different design, has different grip, and more tactile buttons, but you know what? It's very high quality, performs just as well as an original, and the D-pad is good. That's the main thing about these. The D-pad is good, and that's the problem most third-party controllers have, that the D-pad is horrible. But this D-pad is excellent. Highly recommended by me, the Retrobit wired Super Retro controller. It's an excellent alternative to the original, and it'll allow you to play your games. So that's why I bought it, because I got sick of fussing around with original Super Nintendo controllers that have had problems with aging or abuse, to where certain buttons just don't work anymore. So this controller was brand new, works perfectly, feels great in the hand, has very tactile buttons, which could result in finger fatigue if you're going to play a button masher. But other than that, probably the best alternative you could find anywhere to the original Super Nintendo controller. I definitely highly recommend it, and I give it a 10 out of 10. And I'll probably be using this full time on my Super Nintendo because it just feels great. So is it worth it or not? I paid $10 for 2 of these. I'd say it is definitely worth picking one of these up. If you need to just get some brand new controllers for your Super Nintendo and you don't want to deal with used ones that could be broken, like I did. So, yeah, I definitely recommend it. These are great controllers. Definitely a thumbs up from me. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and have a good one, everybody. Ciao.